Hello and welcome to a new edition of The Big Picture, the show where we try to go beyond the news to understand the larger processes that are driving news events. India faces a difficult diplomatic environment. Over the past 9 months, the decisions of the Narendra Modi government, once he was re-elected to office, have triggered criticism from different quarters. India's ties with traditional allies have become a bit more uncertain. To discuss these responses in Western democracies, in the Islamic world, in the neighborhood, I'm joined today by a very distinguished guest. Ambassador Deb Mukharji is a retired Indian Foreign Service officer who served as India's ambassador to Nepal and Bangladesh and served also in high positions in the Ministry of External Affairs. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us.
Good to be here.
So, as I mentioned, over the past 9 months, we have seen the Narendra Modi government take pretty radically disruptive decisions domestically, from Kashmir to the Citizenship Amendment Act. There seems to be a diplomatic fallout of these domestic decisions. How do you see it?
Well, of course, Prashant, these decisions, when taken by the government, presumably were not considered to be disruptive. But that has been the overall fallout of these decisions. On 370, the matter is still before the Supreme Court. Some decisions in keeping with the past decisions of the ruling party have been taken. But the kind of lockdown that has taken place, the incarceration of 3 former chief ministers of J&K, and the atmosphere of fear that has permeated the state, or now the Indian territory, is something which has caused international attention and dismay. And also, obviously, J&K is an internal matter of India. But having stated that boldly, we also cannot entirely ignore the fact that it has been very much on the international agenda for the last many, many years. Now, why it happened and so on, that's a different issue. I'm not going into the justification of this, but so any decision there is likely to be seen abroad. And basically, Prashant, I think, as in so many other cases, the absence of dialogue with people who are the stakeholders, that is what has been found disturbing, not only internationally, but certainly very nationally.
Why is it that a change in India's domestic citizenship laws has caused international concern?
Well, I will break it in 2 parts, Prashant. One is the CAA, which is a change in the domestic citizenship law, in which, as you may know, I and many others have pleaded with the Supreme Court to have this annulled. Now, the CAA, the Constitutional Amendment Act, what had existed in the past, is, in our view, directly contravenes 3 specific articles of the Constitution. Articles 14, 21, and 25. And therefore, it becomes, when you make distinctions based on religion, however good your motivations or your intentions, but when you make these distinctions, it is natural that there would be adverse reaction to that nationally and internationally. But, we cannot see the CAA in isolation. We have to see it in conjunction with the NPR and the NRC. And here, I don't wish to repeat the kind of extremely harsh and provocative statements that have emanated from very, very high sources in the government with regard to termites and so on. Now, that has given rise to the apprehension among the minorities and among civil society members like us, that there is some intention somewhere to treat our minorities not as full citizens. Now, this requires obviously a far greater assessment and discussion. But the question here again is a lack of dialogue. I mean, when these fears are there, we cannot say that our intentions are good and leave it at that.
You have to allay the fears.
You have to alleviate those apprehensions. You have to engage in a dialogue. Look, frankly, I think it is deeply unfortunate that while through these bitter winter months, these women sat at Shaheen Bagh and they said that, all we want is for somebody to come and speak to us. They were dismissed as anti-national and Pakistani. Nobody from the establishment reached out to them to tell them, बहनों, देखो, ये आप जो करो सही नहीं है. वो मानते नहीं मानते वो अलग बात है. But that dialogue, the humility to accept that the other party or parties have a point of view, I'm afraid, has been absent.
Since you brought up CAA and NRC, the most direct impact of this externally has been in the relationship with Bangladesh. And before I come to the rest of the world, Bangladesh is a country you know really well. You're probably somebody in India who knows Bangladesh better than most other Indians. We have seen that India and Bangladesh relations improved over the past decade. But over the past 3-4 months, there have been concerns that Dhaka seems to have expressed about CAA and a possible NRC. 4 visits have been cancelled, high-level Bangladeshi visits. What is the apprehension in Bangladesh, and have we done enough to allay those apprehensions?
Well, the apprehensions arise originally from the Assam Accord and subsequently from the kind of statements that we have been consistently making, that these illegal immigrants, namely Bangladeshis and Muslims, because the CAA takes care of the Hindu migrants treated as refugees, that they would be found, extracted from their houses and expelled. I mean, these are the words that have been used. Now, there are certainly illegal Bangladeshis in India. I mean, numbers are not known, but if we go by the Assam experience, they are nowhere near the kind of millions that have been talked about. But leaving numbers aside, the kind of mahal that has been created, the kind of distrust of treating the Bangladeshis as the other that has been created, can only be a matter of concern to our neighbor. I mean, we just had an instance in Mumbai a few days ago when 3 perfectly good Indian, Bengali, Muslim families were picked up for being allegedly Bangladeshis. And you live in Mumbai, how do you prove that you are Indian? You ring up your parents who are in some village in West Bengal. So basically, it is the whole atmosphere that has been created that is of concern. But let me come here to the other thing where Prime Minister Modi has apparently assured Prime Minister Hasina when she was on her last visit that this is an internal matter that does not concern Bangladesh. And such assurances have been given out by our foreign minister, by the foreign secretary and so on. But the reality on the ground is that you are creating an anti-Bangladeshi atmosphere. And in turn, I would draw your attention to the Bangladesh foreign minister, what he said just 2 days ago. Please remember, ours is a political government.
Which means that they also have domestic
pressures. They have domestic concerns. That is one. And don't forget, please don't forget, that it is to the huge credit of this government of Bangladesh that they have fought back the jihadi inroads in their country.
And publicly spoken up in favor of good relations with India.
Good relations with India. And they have taken steps to reassure the minorities, like the end of the end of the Properties Act and so on, and restoration of secularism in the constitution. Now, I think it makes it extremely difficult for them to face up to internal criticism on this issue. And I fear that despite this golden age of our relationship, we have not been sufficiently sensitive to how these matters impact on Dhaka.
My final question, sir, since we're running out of time, is the larger response in the Islamic world. There was a set of reactions from Turkey and Malaysia and Pakistan, of course, for Kashmir. But after CAA, and more importantly, after the Delhi violence that we saw over the past week, we've seen countries like Indonesia and Iran, which have been uh, allies in some ways, criticize India. Does this larger reaction worry you?
It worries me greatly. But Prashant, it is not just the Islamic countries, and their numbers might well grow because, democratic or not, they also have to cater to their public opinion. But look at what's the reactions out of organizations in the United States. The UNHCR, incidentally, has asked the Supreme Court to be allowed to be pleaded as it happens in the plea that we have made. But that's not doesn't concern us. It is up to the Supreme Court. You take the statements that have come at the very highest level from countries like France and Germany. So there is international concern, Prashant, as to which way we are going. And I fear, I know what our current stand is. That this is none of your business, these are internal matter, which is legally up to a point perfectly true. But it has repercussions on your relationships with friends and others alike.
And repercussions that India would be well advised not to
Well,
ignore.
that is something that is for the government to assess and to judge.
Thank you so much, sir, for this extremely insightful conversation.
Thank
We,
you.
and I'm sure our viewers, learned a lot. Thank you so much for joining us for this edition of The Big Picture. Please do join us next week.